We all carry secrets, but some of them are too heavy to keep. Stay with me to explore this one together.
When he took me to Italy, I thought it would be our second honeymoon. When he left, abandoning me alone, I thought I would die of fear. I was wrong. It's funny to remember now, but that day I woke up with a light heart. We were on the plane, the morning sun streaming through the windows, and he was sitting next to me as always, confident, calm. "You've always dreamed of traveling," he said with a smile. Of course I had, but somehow this trip didn't feel like my dream. It was his decision. But did it really matter? We were flying to Italy, the country of my youth that I had never actually visited. He had arranged everything, tickets, the hotel, even the itinerary for a small town in Tuscany I had never heard of. I told myself I should be grateful. When we arrived, it felt like stepping into a postcard. Narrow streets bathed in sunlight, the scent of fresh bread from tiny bakeries, old men chatting animatedly over glasses of wine. I inhaled the air and tried to convince myself I was happy. The first days were magical. We walked for hours, ate pasta in cozy restaurants, sat in the square watching passersby. I laughed at his stories, cherished the moments he looked at me, and felt loved. He held my hand so tightly, as if to say, I belong to him. He took care of everything: money, documents, routes. I was used to trusting him because he always knew best. He could explain why one place was worth visiting and another wasn't, why I shouldn't worry when he was late. I never argued. I trusted him. But even in this fairy tale, something kept me from fully relaxing. Like when I suggested stopping at a shop to pick something out for myself, and he just chuckled. Darling, I've already bought everything for you. You know I have great taste. And I didn't argue, because he really did have great taste. Then there was the evening when I wanted to stay in the square a little longer, to enjoy the cool night air and the glow of the streetlights. He checked his watch and said, "Let's go to a bar instead. I want to introduce you to my friends." His friends were loud, lively. They drank, joked, laughed. I tried to play along, but I felt out of place. And then he said, "She's so naive, isn't she?" and laughed. Everyone joined in. I tried to protest, but he just pulled me close. "Relax. You're too serious." At the time, I didn't realize that was the first crack in my world. I still thought everything was fine. I still believed we were here to grow closer. I should have seen it sooner. The signs were all there, weren't they? But when you love someone, you don't look for reasons to doubt them. You look for reasons to believe. The first time I truly hesitated was when I suggested going to the local market. I had seen the stalls from the window of our hotel vibrant, buzzing with life, overflowing with fresh fruit and handmade trinkets. It looked like something from a movie, and I wanted to be a part of it. "Let's go tomorrow morning," I said, excitement in my voice. He barely looked up from his phone. "Why? It's just a market. I think it'd be fun." He sighed, then smiled in that way that made me feel small, like I was a child asking for something unnecessary. "You'd hate it. Crowds, noise, bargaining, it's not your thing. Besides, I have other plans for us." And just like that, the decision was made. Instead, we spent the afternoon at a bar with his friends. More drinking, more laughter at jokes I didn't understand. I tried to keep up, smiling even when the jokes were at my expense. "You don't mind, do you?" he said, squeezing my knee under the table. "We're just having fun." I minded, but I told myself I was overreacting. He was just being playful. It was nothing. Then, the next evening, it happened again. We had spent the day exploring, and I was exhausted. When he mentioned meeting his friends again, I hesitated. "I think I'll just head back to the hotel tonight." He stared at me, his expression unreadable. "Seriously?" "Yes." A pause, then a sharp laugh. "Oh, come on, you'll be bored alone. Don't be like this." Something about the way he said it, "don't be like this," made my stomach tighten. But I went. And this time, the teasing was worse. "She's such a dreamer," he told them, grinning. "Always imagining things, getting upset over nothing." They all laughed. I laughed too, but my throat felt tight. Afterward, as we walked back, I finally found the courage to say, "I don't like when you joke about me like that." He stopped, turning to face me under the glow of the streetlights. "You're too sensitive." "I just don't like it." His smile faded. "You always do this." Why can't you just have fun? I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. That night, lying in bed next to him, I stared at the ceiling, wondering why I felt lonelier than ever. The city outside was alive, pulsing with laughter and music. And yet, I felt like I was sinking. I told myself it was nothing, just a bad night. I was still trying to believe in us. I should have known. But that's the thing about love, or what you think is love. It wraps around your senses like a thick fog, making you ignore the signs. The way your skin prickles with unease when his hand lingers just a little too tight on your wrist, when his laugh cuts a little too sharp at your expense. The morning after that night, the one where I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my chest hollow, I woke to an empty bed. His side was cold. For a moment, I panicked, my heart slamming against my ribs. Then I heard his voice from the balcony, low and amused, speaking rapid Italian into his phone. I caught only fragments. Si, stasera, non preoccupati. When he stepped back inside, he froze, seeing me awake. His smile was quick, practiced. Morning, sleepyhead. Who was that? I asked. Just Matteo. We're meeting him tonight. I sat up, the sheets pooling around me. I don't think I want to go out again. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes darkened. You're really going to make this a habit, huh? A habit? Sulking. Canceling plans. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, I get it. You're tired. But this trip is supposed to be fun. I'm trying to make it fun for you. The words stung. For me. As if I were some petulant child he had to entertain. I swallowed. I just need a quiet night. A beat of silence. Then he shrugged. Fine. Do what you want. I didn't go back to the hotel. Not right away. Instead, I wandered. The streets of the town were different alone. Softer, slower. I bought a gelato from a cart pistachio, my favorite, though he always said it tasted like grass, and sat on the edge of a fountain, watching couples stroll by. For the first time in days, I breathed. When I finally returned, the room was empty. His suitcase was gone. My first thought was absurd. Maybe he went out, but his toiletries weren't in the bathroom. His shoes weren't by the door. And then I saw it. A note on the nightstand, scribbled in his hasty script. You wanted space. Here it is. Don't overreact. I'll be back when you've chilled out. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. No signal. No charger. He'd taken it. His was the only adapter we'd brought. I called the front desk. My Italian broken and frantic. Il mio marito. Dove? The clerk only shrugged. È uscito. He left. Then the panic set in. No passport. He kept them safe in his bag. No wallet. He paid for everything. No phone. Just me, in a foreign country, with nothing but the clothes on my back and the key card to a room I couldn't afford. I sank onto the bed, my vision blurring. This isn't happening. But it was. I don't know how long I sat there before I remembered the hotel phone. My fingers fumbled as I dialed his number. It rang once. Twice. Then his voice, bright and amused. Miss me already? The sound of laughter in the background. Glasses clinking. His friends. Where are you? My voice was barely a whisper. Relax, it's a test. A test? Yeah, you've been so clingy lately. I figured you could use a night alone. Prove you're not as helpless as you act. The words slithered under my skin. Helpless. You took my passport, I said slowly. And? A beat. Then, the truth, sharp and sudden. He's enjoying this. I hung up. I walked. No plan. No destination. Just forward. Through winding alleys, past shuttered shops and glowing lamplights. The night air was cool against my flushed cheeks. At some point, I started crying, not the pretty, silent tears of movie sugly, heaving sobs that made my ribs ache. I stumbled into a dimly lit cafe, half empty at this hour, and collapsed into a corner table. A woman appeared. Late 50s, maybe, with warm brown eyes and flour dusted on her apron. She didn't ask questions. Just set down a cup of espresso and a napkin. Piangi pure, she said softly. Cry it out. And I did. I don't know how long I sat in that cafe, clutching the espresso cup like it was the only real thing left in the world. The woman, Sophia, as I would later learn, brought me a plate of biscotti without asking. When I tried to refuse, shaking my head, she simply patted my shoulder and said, "Mangia, fa bene. Eat. It's good for you." I took a bite. The almond crumbled between my teeth, sweet and bitter at once. And then, like a dam breaking, the words spilled out in broken Italian, in frantic English, in gestures and tears. I told her about him, about the trip, about the way he had left me here like a discarded suitcase. Sophia listened. Then, without hesitation, she said, "Stasera, dormi qui." Tonight, you sleep here. She took me upstairs to a small apartment above the cafe, cozy, cluttered, smelling of rosemary and old books. The guest room had a narrow bed with a quilt, handmade in faded blues and yellows. "Mia nana," Sophia said, smoothing the fabric with something like pride. I wanted to refuse, to insist I was fine, that I could figure it out. But the truth was, I had nowhere else to go. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling again. But this time, the silence was different. No soft snores beside me. No weight of his expectations pressing into the mattress. Just me. And for the first time in years, I wondered, who am I without him? The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like waking up. Sophia woke me at dawn with a knock and a tray of breakfast. Fresh bread, ricotta, honey so golden it looked like liquid sunlight. "Augie, lavori con me," she announced. "Today, you work with me." I blinked. "Io, non parlo bene italiano." She waved a hand. "Imparare. You'll learn." And so I did. That first day was a blur of mispronounced words and fumbled tasks. I spilled coffee grounds, confused zucchero, sugar, with pepperoncino, chili flakes, and nearly dropped a tray of glasses. But Sophia just laughed, not the mocking laughter I was used to, but something warm, encouraging. "Piano, piano," she said, steadying my hands. "Slowly, slowly." By afternoon, I could make a decent cappuccino. By evening, I'd memorized half the menu. And when a customer, an elderly man with kind eyes, said grazy and left a tip, something inside me cracked open. I did this. 3 days passed before he called. Sophia handed me the cafe's landline, her expression unreadable. "Where the hell are you?" His voice was sharp, irritated. "I came back to the hotel, and you were gone." I took a breath. "You left me. Don't be dramatic. It was a few days. I told you it was a test." Outside, the afternoon sun painted the piazza in gold. A group of children chased pigeons, shrieking with laughter. I passed. I said quietly, "Silence." Then, a scoff. "Oh, really? You're what, playing tourist? Waiting for me to rescue you?" I looked down at my hands. Flour under my nails. A burn from the espresso machine, proof I'd been living. "No," I said, "I'm not waiting at all." I hung up. That night, Sophia sat me down with a glass of limoncello. "Lui è stupido," she declared. "He's stupid." I laughed, but it caught in my throat. "What do I do now?" She shrugged. "Whatever you want." Simple. Impossible. I thought of the girl I'd been, the one who packed her dreams away because he said they were impractical, the one who apologized for taking up space. That girl wouldn't have survived this. But maybe someone else could. The police station smelled like stale coffee and cheap lemon cleaner, the kind that doesn't quite mask the sweat and anxiety beneath. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly glow on the peeling green paint of the walls. I stood in front of Officer Moretti's desk, my fingers gripping the edge of the worn wood until my knuckles turned white. Sophia stood beside me, a steady presence in her flour-dusted apron, her Italian sharp and rapid as a sewing needle stitching through fabric. "Il tuo marito," Officer Moretti repeated, slower this time, as if I were a child. "Ha preso il tuo passaporto?" "Si," I whispered. My throat felt raw, as if I'd been screaming for hours. Maybe I had been inside my own head. Sophia slammed her palm on the desk. "È un crimine. Non può lasciarla qui senza documenti." It's a crime. He can't leave her here without documents. The officer sighed, rubbing his temples, like he'd dealt with this 1,000 times before. Maybe he had. Maybe there were other women like me, stranded, erased, their identities tucked into a man's back pocket like loose change. He picked up the phone, dialed with deliberate slowness, and spoke in low tones I couldn't decipher. I turned to Sofia. "What's happening?" She squeezed my hand. "Sta chiamando l'ambasciata." He's calling the embassy. 4 hours. That's how long it took to untangle myself from him on paper. 4 hours of sitting on a hard plastic chair, my legs bouncing with nervous energy. 4 hours of bad vending machine espresso that tasted like burnt rubber, of signing forms with trembling hands, of explaining, over and over, that no, I didn't lose me passport, it was taken from me. The embassy clerk, a woman with a tight bun and tired eyes, slid a temporary travel document across the counter. "Valid for 1 month," she said. "After that, you must leave or apply for a visa." I stared at the paper, my name, my photo, my freedom, flimsy as the sheet it was printed on. "Thank you," I said, but the words didn't feel big enough. Sofia looped her arm through mine as we stepped into the fading sunlight. "Ora, festeggiamo," she declared. "Now, we celebrate." We went to a pizzeria by the river, the kind of place tourists never found. The kind of place where the oven was older than I was, its bricks blackened by decades of fire. Sofia ordered for us, "Margarita e una capricciosa, e qualcosa da bere," and when the pizza arrived, the crust blistered and charred at the edges, I didn't wait for permission. I didn't calculate calories. I didn't hear his voice in my head saying, "You'll regret that later." I took a bite. The tomato was bright and tangy, the basil fresh as summer, the mozzarella stretching like taffy between my fingers. And then I devoured it. 2 slices, then 3, grease shining on my lips, flour dusting my shirt. Sofia laughed, raising her glass of house red. "Finalmente, finally." I looked down at my hands, at the crumbs scattered across the checkered tablecloth, and something inside me cracked open. I chose this. The cafe had been closed for an hour, but the scent of espresso still lingered in the air, mixing with the lemon-scented soap suds that climbed up our arms as we washed the last of the cups. The silence between us was comfortable, punctuated only by the clink of porcelain and the occasional splash of water. Then, without looking up from the cup she was scrubbing, Sofia said, "Anch'io." Me too. The words hung between us, heavy with meaning. I paused, my hands still submerged in the warm, soapy water. "What do you mean?" I asked, though some part of me already knew. She set the cup down carefully, then turned to face me, her dark eyes reflecting the dim glow of the cafe's overhead lights. 20 years ago, she began, I was you. His name was Klaus. Tall, blonde, with a Rolex that gleamed under the Mediterranean sun and a smile that made women forget their own names. He had found her in Zurich, where she was working as a waitress, saving money to study literature. "You are too beautiful for this place," he had told her, sliding a crisp 100-franc note under her coffee cup as a tip. "Come to Positano with me. I'll show you what life should taste like." And Sofia, young and hungry for something bigger than her small Swiss town, had said yes. For weeks, it was a fairy tale. Private yachts, champagne breakfasts, his fingers tracing the curve of her waist as they danced under strings of twinkling lights. He paid for everything. "What's mine is yours," he'd murmur against her neck, and she had let him. Because wasn't this what love was supposed to be? Until the morning she woke up alone. No note, no warning. Just an empty suite and a hotel manager knocking on the door, holding a bill for 10,000 euros. "The gentleman said you would settle this," the man said, his voice polite but firm. Klaus had taken her passport for safekeeping 2 days before. She had no money, no way home, no one to call. The hotel gave her 24 hours to pay. When she couldn't, they took her luggage as collateral and turned her out onto the streets. For 3 days, she slept on the beach, hidden between rocks, the salt air sticking to her skin. She begged for food at the back doors of restaurants, her pride dissolving with each refusal. Then, on the 4th day, an old man named Giuseppe found her crying behind a dumpster. "High fame?" he asked. "Are you hungry?" He took her to his lemon grove, a terraced hillside overlooking the sea, and gave her a job. "You pick, you pack, you earn," he said, handing her a basket and a pair of gloves. No questions. The work was brutal. The sun burned her shoulders. The lemon thorns sliced her fingers. At night, she slept in a storage shed, on a cot that smelled of mildew and pesticide. But she survived. One evening, after 6 months of saving every euro, Giuseppe handed her an envelope. Inside was enough money for a train ticket to Florence, and a note. Non tornare de lui. Don't go back to him. She never did. Instead, she stayed in Italy, worked in a bakery, learned the language, saved enough to buy a one-way ticket to this town, where she took a job at this very cafe. And when the old owner retired, she bought it from him, one espresso at a time. But why Italy? I asked, my fingers pruning in the dishwater. Why not go home? Sophia smiled, flicking suds at me. Perché mi sono svegliata? Because I woke up. She dried her hands on her apron, then reached into her pocket, pulling out a faded photograph. A younger version of herself stood in front of the lemon grove, her face sunburnt but smiling. A basket of yellow fruit balanced on her hip. In Switzerland, I was asleep, she said. I let someone else dream for me. But here, she tapped the photo. Here, I learned to dream for myself. She took the photograph back, tucking it carefully into her wallet. You think this is just about your husband? She asked. Number, this is about you. What you let yourself believe. I thought of the way I had shrunk myself to fit into his world. The way I had called it love. How did you stop being angry? I whispered. Sophia laughed, a rich, throaty sound. Oh, I was angry. For years. But one day, I made a lemon tart, and it was perfect. And I realized he didn't take my hands. He didn't take my heart. He just showed me I was giving them to the wrong person. She turned off the faucet. Now, she said, we make tiramisu. And you learn. The paper was cheap, a sheet torn from the notebook Sophia used for inventory lists, the edges frayed where I'd ripped it free. The pen was worse, a half-dried ballpoint that skipped ink like a stone across water. But none of that mattered. I sat at the cafe's back table long after closing, a single candle flickering beside me, its wax pooling over an empty Chianti bottle. Outside, the first summer storm of the season lashed against the windows, rain tapping the glass like impatient fingers. I stared at the blank page. Dear Mom. The words looked strange in my handwriting, smaller, tighter than I remembered. The last letter I'd written her was on thick ivory stationery, the kind with the embossed initials his mother had picked out for us as a wedding gift. You always said I loved too hard. My throat tightened. I hadn't spoken to my mother in 11 months. Not since the fight at Christmas, when she'd pulled me into the kitchen and hissed. You've disappeared into him. I'd worn his favorite color that night, the emerald green silk blouse he'd chosen, and when she reached out to touch my wrist, I flinched. You're too thin, she'd whispered. I'm happy, I'd lied. Now, the pen dug into the paper. I'm not coming home. A drop of rain found its way through the old window frame, landing beside the words, blurring the ink just enough to look like tears. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Sophia's voice floated from the kitchen, where she was humming along to some old Italian love song, the kind that sounded happy until you listened to the lyrics about betrayal and lost chances. The scent of espresso and mascarpone curled through the air, tonight's lesson. The cheese must breathe, she'd insisted earlier, pressing a finger to my lips when I tried to rush the folding process. Like a heart, if you suffocate it, it turns to stone. I added to the letter, there's a woman here who teaches me how to make tiramisu. The secret, she says, is letting the mascarpone breathe. My hands stilled. 3 weeks ago, I wouldn't have understood. 3 weeks ago, I was still pressing myself into the shape of his expectations, holding my breath until he decided I could exhale. Now, the storm outside mirrored something inside me, wild, untamed, washing away the old tracks. I think I understand now. I'll send money when I can. A practical afterthought, but the pen hesitated over the closing. Love, then nothing. No. Claire, the name he'd insisted was, more elegant than the one I was born with. No, Mrs. his last name, the identity I'd shrink-wrap myself into. Just the dash, stark and defiant. For the first time in years, I dreamed of something that wasn't him. A yellow house with olive trees. A cat sunning itself on a windowsill. My hands sticky with fig jam, handing jars to smiling strangers. When I woke, the pillow was dry. The next morning, I caught my reflection in the cafe's foggy espresso machine. My hair was a mess, my cheeks pink from the kitchen heat. There was flour in my eyebrows. I laughed. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Che cosa? What? Nothing, I said. I just look different. She handed me a biscotti. Meglio. Better. The morning it happened, I was elbow deep in bread dough. Sophia had finally trusted me with her pain Toscano recipe, and I was determined to get the salt ratio right this time. The cafe was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional bubble of the espresso machine cooling down. Then the bell above the door jingled. I didn't look up. Un momento, I called, pressing my thumb into the dough's springy center. Claire. His voice hit me like a bucket of ice water. There he stood in the doorway, sunlight glinting off his Rolex, his crisp linen shirt unwrinkled despite the humidity. He held a bouquet of white roses, my least favorite, the ones he always bought because they're elegant, not messy, like those wildflowers you like. For 3 heartbeats, the world narrowed to 1. The flower dusting my forearms. 2. The dough slowly deflating beneath my frozen hands. 3. His eyes, cold and assessing, tracking the stain on my apron. You look rustic, he said. He moved toward the counter like he expected me to meet him there. Like he hadn't abandoned me. Like this was just a scene from a play where he'd written all the lines. Surprise, he said, laying the roses on the counter. I figured you'd had enough of your little adventure. The scent of them, cloying, funeral parlor sweet, clung to the back of my throat. I wiped my hands slowly on my apron. You figured wrong. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Come on, Claire, the joke's over. Our flight leaves at Charlotte. A beat of silence. What? My name, I said, peeling off the apron. It's Charlotte. His laugh was sharp as a knife tap against glass. Christ, is this a midlife crisis? Next you'll tell me you're staying here to find yourself. Behind me, the kitchen door swung open. Sophia emerged with a tray of biscotti, her gaze flicking between us. Ah, she said dryly. Il principe ritorna. The prince returns. He ignored her, leaning closer. You have nothing here. No money, no visa, no skills. I make tiramisu now, I interrupted. And bread. And I can say fuck off in 6 languages. Sophia snorted. His fingers curled around the rose's cellophane wrapper, crushing it. Last chance. Walk out that door with me right now, or what? I stepped around the counter. You'll leave me? Too late. Something flickered across his face. Confusion, maybe. He wasn't used to scripts being rewritten. You'll regret this, he hissed. I thought of all the things I had regretted. The job offer I turned down because he said offices were petty. The friends I'd stopped seeing because they didn't challenge me. The way I'd let my passport live in his jacket pocket like a kept thing. The dough on the counter was ruined now. I'd have to start over. Maybe, I said, but it'll be my regret. He left with a slam of the door, the roses still on the counter. Sophia wordlessly plucked one and tucked it behind my ear. Bruta Celta, she muttered, white as for funerals. I laughed until I cried. That night, we burned the roses in the cafe's brick oven, watching the petals blacken and curl, the scent of them mixing with wood smoke and baking bread. The temporary travel document expired in 12 days. I spread it on the cafe counter like a tarot card predicting doom, its crisp edges already softening from my nervous handling. Sophia traced the bold red expiration date with a flour-dusted finger. Allora, she said. We make you Italian. I choked on my espresso. That's not how immigration works. She grinned and pulled a battered cookbook from under the register. Number but this is. The spine cracked open to a page titled Matrimonio per Cucinare, Marriage for Cooking. A recipe for wedding almond cookies filled the margins, but someone had scribbled notes in looping cursive. Piero at City Hall owes me for the 1,997 truffle incident. I gaped. Are you suggesting I marry someone for papers? Sophia winked. Only if you want to stay. I met Marco 3 days later when he delivered the morning's catch to the cafe's back door. He was all sunburned shoulders and salt-cured laughter, his hands nicked with scars from fishing nets. When he saw me struggling with the squid delivery, he didn't take over, just knelt beside me and demonstrated how to twist the tentacles counterclockwise, like you're opening a stubborn wine bottle. Then, as if it were nothing, he pulled a single yellow rose from his jacket pocket. For the new girl. Sophia coughed pointedly from the doorway. Giallo e meglio, she stage whispered. Yellow is better. I pressed the rose between the pages of my Italian dictionary that night. Not because I was in love, but because it was the first gift anyone had given me that didn't come with conditions. The immigration office smelled like stale cigarettes and hopelessness. Officer Bianchi, a man with a mustache thinner than his patience, flipped through my papers. No visa, no work permit, non niente, he sighed. Sophia slammed her palms on his desk. She makes the best tiramisu in Tuscany. Not a recognized skill category, Bianchi deadpanned. Then, miracle of miracles, Marco appeared, smelling like seawater and carrying a permit application stamped Pescatore Specializado, specialized fisherman. My boat needs a translator, he lied smoothly. 4. International fish buyers. Bianchi eyed the three of us. This is the stupidest scheme I've ever seen. Sophia slid a container of tiramisu across his desk. He took a bite, sighed, stamped the form. For years, my nightmares had the same set dressing. An airport terminal with no exits. A voice saying, "You'll never manage without me." My hands crumbling to sand. But that night, I dreamed of Sophia's lemon grove. I was kneeling in the dirt, planting something not lemons, but spiky green artichokes, their leaves sharp as liberation. When I woke, my pillow smelled like rosemary and the sea. The morning I became a legal resident of Italy, Sophia burned the cornetti. I smelled the smoke from the street, that particular acrid sweetness of overworked butter meeting its demise. When I pushed through the cafe door, she was standing over the tray of blackened pastries like a vengeful goddess, her wooden spoon still raised. "You," she declared, pointing at me with the charred utensil, "are staying." She shoved a letter into my flour-dusted hands. The official seal of the Questura gleamed up at me. My name, Charlotte Eleanor Whitaker, typed neatly beside the word, "Approved." The self-employment visa, the one we'd applied for after realizing my artisanal pastry expertise, Sophia's phrasing, qualified under Italy's Slavoro autonomo laws. I burst into tears. Sophia, being Sophia, slapped a ball of dough onto the counter. "Cry into this. It needs salt anyway." Marco found me later on the pier, my legs dangling over the water where the fishing boats bobbed like corks. He sat beside me without a word, peeling a sun-warmed orange with his pocket knife. "Sophia says you got your papers," he finally said, handing me a segment. The juice burst tart-sweet on my tongue. I did. "Does this mean I have to stop pretending you're my fish market translator?" I laughed, but he'd gone uncharacteristically still. The knife hovered over the orange rind. "I was thinking," he said slowly, "maybe you'd want to see Sardinia next month. On my brother's boat, as..." He gestured vaguely between us. "Not as a translator. The last piece of my old self, the one that would have immediately looked for permission, dissolved like sugar in espresso." "Yes," I said, "but I'm bringing my own passport." That night, I found the draft of another letter to my mother in my notebook. It was 3 months old, written just after the confrontation with him. The ink had bled from a spilled limoncello, but the words were still legible. "Dear Mom, I thought I'd be scared. But the strangest thing happened. I never finished it. Now," I tore the page into strips, letting them flutter into Sophia's brick oven where they curled into ash. Some stories don't need explaining. On my final night as Heraprendista, Sophia made me prepare the tiramisu blindfolded. "Taste is memory," she said, tying the scarf over my eyes. "Show me what you remember." My hands moved without hesitation. The espresso, bitter as regret but twice as strong. The mascarpone, whipped until it sighed. The cocoa dusted in the shape of the constellation we'd seen from her rooftop. When she lifted the blindfold, her eyes gleamed. Bene. Not perfect. Not just like mine. Good. The ferry to Sardinia left at dawn. I arrived with one backpack, mine. 2, a passport, unstamped by anyone's hands but my own. 3, a postcard from Sophia featuring a single word, respira. Breathe. As the boat pulled away from the dock, I didn't look back at the shrinking skyline. Somewhere beyond it, an empty hotel room gathered dust. A man's voicemails went unanswered, and a mother traced postmarks on an envelope. But here, salt spray on my lips, the horizon stretching wide, I finally understood what freedom tasted like. Not sweet, not bitter, alive.
I think you cannot click on the next video before time runs out. You lost.